Hi everyone, so my name's Antony Welfare and I'm the Chief Commercial Officer at Nem Software, and I'm really happy to be here at REIMAGINE 2020.
All right, hello everybody. Welcome to the second edition of REIMAGINE 2020. I'm one of your hosts today, Adam, with my co-host Galen Danziger, CTO and co-founder of MouseBelt. Glad to have you join us for another exciting discussion with Antony Welfare, Chief Commercial Officer of Nem Software. Super excited to have him. Nem is one of our partners actually within our education campaign. They've been part of our last conference. For all of you that may have missed the first REIMAGINE conference in May, please visit REIMAGINE 2020, the REIMAGINE 2020 website at ri2020.io. You can also check out the REIMAGINE 2020 YouTube channel, where we have, 60 plus fireside chats and interviews, various panel discussions, where we talk about blockchain, crypto, trends, and industry insights. Without further ado, let me go ahead and introduce you to Antony. For those of you that don't know, Antony, thank you for joining us today.
Thank you. No, it's a pleasure to be here today.
How you doing?
I'm doing well, doing very well, thank you.
All right. So let's go ahead and kick this thing off. Super excited to have you. I know you just joined Nem recently, but before we get into Nem and Symbol and all that, we have a lot of viewers right now that are in school, going back to school, debating if they should go into the workforce or stay in school. In kind of this blockchain crypto, scene. And we've been having a lot of interviews for the last, couple weeks and talking to various projects, talking to various teams and protocols, and everybody has a different journey. So I'd love to get your journey, leading up to blockchain. I know you were part of Oracle, you're part of this retail consortium, so really hands-on there. How did you get into it? And before you got into blockchain, what were you doing that led you into wanting to get into blockchain?
No, it's really interesting people's journeys. This bit, I ask this, and because I'm new, 2 weeks into Nem and Symbol, I get to ask everyone this question. So I've got to remember it myself again now. My background's actually retail background. So I'm born into a retail family, small shop. Been retail my entire life, working since 15 years old in retail management degree, and then started working in corporate retail for 15 years. And around about sort of 10 years ago, I moved from retail, sort of being in retailers, to consulting. And once I was in consulting, it was around mobile commerce, online shopping, and all those good things that we take for granted today. I got into those back in, sort of 10, probably 12, 15 years ago. And then around about 5 years ago, so 2015 into 2016, I kept hearing this Bitcoin thing, what is this Bitcoin weird thing? It has to be dodgy. That's all everybody said to me. So back in the good old days, it was always bad. But I sat there and I thought, we advise global companies, brands and retailers, why don't we just use Bitcoin as a currency? Don't worry about translation of currency and all that. And so that was where it started. And at the time, the one of the creative guys used to sit opposite me, and he's a guy from Spain. And he said, because I said, what's this Bitcoin thing? And he said to me, oh, my friends in Venezuela are getting into this because of their currency. And all of a sudden I was like, whoa, what's this? So I got into that, and obviously the hyperinflation is just crazy in places like Venezuela and many other places around the world now, unfortunately. But
we had somebody actually join us from Venezuela who built who was involved in the petro actually. So it's funny that you bring that up. He came in and started talking about how that country was going to do that. So the word kind of spreads, and that's how sparked your.
I know, it's fascinating because I heard about that sort of thing back 5-6 years ago. And so I was like, well, let's look a bit more at this Bitcoin thing. And I was like, okay, Bitcoin's fine, but blockchain. And all of a sudden it was around Ethereum, and Ethereum was starting in London. So the Ethereum London meetup in, I think it's end of 2016, something like that. And I was like, wow, Ethereum, that could just fix everything for supply chain, for loyalty, for everything that retailers do, everything I've spent my life doing. If we underpin it by blockchain and Ethereum at the time, this is it. we've fixed our world, and we've got a lot more trust, transparency in those. So I did more research. I bought some Bitcoins, I bought some Ethereum, because as soon as you buy it, you're really interested in it. And then obviously it's around the ICO hype and around that going into 2017. And so there was a lot of money to be made, and obviously, lots of interesting discussions. But for me, I was like, right, I'm not interested in the crypto side in terms of my career. I still am very interested in crypto, and I love it, and it's great that the markets are going back up again, and we've got some reality this time. But I was like, businesses have to understand this. And everybody I talked to in businesses were like, blockchain, Bitcoin. Why are you talking about Bitcoin? It's nothing to do with an enterprise. And so I said to myself in 2016, I'm going to pivot my career from retail and e-commerce and all that stuff, and I'm going to go into blockchain, enterprise blockchain, and work out how this can work for businesses, for enterprise, for government, for big business, and how this can make a difference. So I decided to join Oracle Corporation. And for me, that was because I thought at the time, the biggest blockchain company in the world had to be Oracle, because it's the biggest database and back-end company. So the logic was there, just probably timing is probably about 10 years in advance, really. Um, so, so obviously Oracle has spent a lot of money, and with Oracle, I put together the go-to-market and all the plans for the Oracle blockchain platform, track and trace, lot lineage, and some of the apps that were built on it. So I spent...
What year is this? What year is this? Like
This
20?
is 2017, 2018, really, into 19.
Pretty recent. Yeah.
Yeah. And so a lot of discussions with companies about blockchain, day in, day out, big enterprise C-suites, and they're still going Bitcoin, Bitcoin, Bitcoin. I'm like, no, blockchain, no, nothing to do with that. All about, enterprise, about what blockchain can do, trust and transparency. So I actually then wrote a book commercializing blockchain back in 2018, going into last year. And the point of that was, I was day in, day out explaining that it wasn't Bitcoin, and it was driving me insane because I couldn't do my job, because all the time I had to explain it's not Bitcoin and this is what it does. So I got 13 contributors around the world to just help spec out what is enterprise blockchain, what can blockchain be used for. So half of the book is use cases, and the rest is the history, consensus mechanisms, all that good stuff. And so from that's then taken me. So then I was at Oracle, and Oracle are not investing big in Bitcoin, in blockchain, because of where they are. They don't need to yet. They'll buy companies in the next 5 to 10 years. They don't need to do this yet. They are looking at it, doing innovation, but it's quite small. So I moved to DXC Technology, which is the old HP Enterprise, where I set up the blockchain practice for globally. So we had around about, there was 3 years of sort of development and innovation. And my role was to make it more commercial and make it, in essence, a business unit. Very tiny, I mean, so tiny. There's 170,000 employees, I had about 30. So, it's that's where we were in the scale. But again...
But you had support, but it seems like obviously there was support. You switched from Oracle to this team now. And I'm assuming, like, during the interview, like, they're actively looking for somebody like yourself to implement and integrate the strategy, right? So there's support there. What were their thoughts, I guess, in general? Like, when you're having these discussions, they're like, hey, we need this. This is the future. It's not ready yet. Yeah. But, let's start doing some research and due diligence.
So the big companies, the big tech giants, and the sort of SIs like DXC, consultancies, SIs, they're using I keep saying Bitcoin now. They're using blockchain because it's an innovation and it's new, and they want to talk to clients. But it's such a small part of their, 0.01 of their revenue. So it's so small, it's more of a show, really. So they are investing in it a bit, but not really. None of them, I wouldn't say, apart from IBM, EY, and a couple of others, the rest are not really investing in it yet. And so that's been the frustration for me, because around about a year ago, I started, and bearing in mind, I've been in enterprise now for nearly 4 or 5 years only. And when you're in enterprise, you're not allowed to talk cryptocurrency and public blockchain. So especially Oracle was literally, do not ever mention cryptocurrencies.
Yeah.
And probably about a year ago. So, and mid to end of 2019, I was going, we need to use both. So with DXC, we use a lot of Hyperledger, a lot of Corda, a lot of private chains.
Yep.
And how do they scale, really? How do they work with global, people who need to interact, where you need 1 million nodes, not 100,000 or 1,000? So I was sat there more and looking at, we have to have a hybrid. We have to have public and private. So Ethereum 2.0 obviously has been talked about for a while. And that, for me, I was like, okay, maybe that's the next generation. That's for me, hybrid blockchain is the next generation. And then I came across Nem and Symbol. So around about probably 3 months ago or so, the guys started talking to me and saying, look, we're setting up Nem Software. Nem Software is going to be launching Symbol, which is the hybrid enterprise blockchain built for enterprise. And it spans some of these problems that I was sat there day in, day out with clients having issues. How do you scale a Hyperledger, solution? How do you scale Corda? You can't.
So what you're saying is just kind of take it back a little bit. On the enterprise front, there are these concerns of security, privacy, so that, you're exploring this private, for everybody watching, right? But, the target audience here is, we have some beginners, we have some novices, we have some experts, we have some students, we have some entrepreneurs, founders, developers, all kind of tuning into all these discussions. And I appreciate kind of like, where you're taking this, because you're at the heart of an actual sector or category of retail. And even beyond that is supply chain, which I keep hearing all the time. So I'm super stoked to keep talking about this as we go into Nem and Symbol. And you're talking about scalability issues with you're talking about that with the private side?
Yeah. So when you look at private permissions, everybody in the network, you have to know them all. Okay, so you have to onboard them, and that's either as a node or a user. So quite often that means KYC. That means know your customer. You have to validate. So if you want to scale to 10,000, 100,000, that's a lot of admin, a lot of work. And then do each of those host a node themselves? And if you just want a tiny piece of information from one person or one small company, say, you wouldn't do that. It costs far too much. So for me, scalability is not about, can we process 1 million transactions a second? That's irrelevant. It's about, can you manage for a reasonable cost a network that could be 10, 100, 1 million, 10 million people, or nodes, or whatever they are. And that's for me where you need this hybrid, where you need private and public, and they need to work fully together so that you've got the security and the risks and that side of it. Because an enterprise, security, risk, and all risk management is number one, without question. Because if you think, an enterprise, Apple, Google, Walmart, etc., the amount of data, the amount of people they touch, they don't want anything that can damage their systems, their data, their privacy in their networks. And so it was always, you can only do private. But actually, there are ways to do public and private now. So there's some cool technology.
What about going full public? Not yet, but
we'll see. I mean, if you look at using ZKP, zero knowledge proof, with public, maybe that'll work. But it's not at a point where you could scale it yet. Now, let's see, maybe a year, 2 years time, maybe a different discussion, but definitely not yet, but it's work in progress. There's a lot of work happening there, which again is cool.
Yeah, and I just want to continue staying on this theme here, this topic, for just a few more minutes. How does blockchain impact the supply? You're coming from retail, and that's one of the use cases, and I kind of, let's just stick to that, and supply chain as well. That's a use case in itself. What are so I think you kind of touched on some of the barriers here, but maybe you can elaborate more, or maybe give different perspective on like full adoption. From your experience, what have you seen, like the ones that are really interested in moving forward with it and the ones that aren't? And what compare and contrast, I guess, because I've been hearing supply chain and like even for healthcare, right? blockchain's like a good source yet, and there's a lot of startups and there's a lot of apps and a lot of teams focused on it, yet it's not adopted, only because even the business model in healthcare is not like compatible with blockchain, of like transparency and giving control back and having these kind of different mindset, right? So from the retail side of supply chain, what have you heard? Who have you talked to that's maybe the both worlds of like no and yes, makes sense, it doesn't. Why should I use it or not?
Supply chain, where it's working the most at the moment is where you have something high value, so luxury goods, luxury items, where you can then track it, trace it, even put tags and secure, say IoT devices, say, because you make lots of margin from it. So a Gucci handbag, for example, it's hundreds of dollars of profit, so you can afford $3 for a tracking device, which then you write to blockchain. You know where it is, you know who it's sold to, etc. So that's where things are happening a lot around luxury, high value metals in cars, in batteries and things. So all our phones, all our cars and things have metals. Quite a lot of them are quite rare. So again, you want to track those because they're expensive. Then you've got pharmaceuticals, that side of healthcare, because you want to know that the drugs that you're taking are the drugs that they say they are, and they do what they say. They come from the right factory and things. So again, I know in the US and EU, they brought in rules that you have to have QR codes and things on packets, and I can't remember the name of them. But imagine if you then just do the next step, which is log it all with blockchain.
Yeah.
And record the information on blockchain where it goes. You can even set it to, if I'm being treated for a drug, I take a photo when I'm taking the drug to prove that I've taken it. Because one of the things that I learned around medical research is, especially around cancer research, a lot of the results and the sort of analysis is a problem because 30% of people don't take the drugs at the right time, in the right quantities, etc. And so when you think about it, you go, oh yeah, if they don't take it, 30% of the results are rubbish.
Yeah.
It doesn't help in
Yeah.
the solution. Yeah. So it's things like that where you can use, so in supply chain, it's things like high value, these things. What it's not yet generically being used for is tracking bananas through a supermarket or tracking milk. There are trials, by the way, and lots of these, but because a gallon of milk is $2, whatever it is, it's not a lot of money. So why would you track milk? But actually, you do want to know where it came from. You do want to know, that it's fresh, which day, etc., etc. So that's where you need public blockchain. So for me, because you're then asking the farmers to track things. You're not going to ask them to put an IoT device onto the milk. We just need to do some sort of QR code or some sort of tracking, but they scan it with their mobile phone. They basically scan the product, with an app, and that's on public blockchain. They pay 0.00p for that information to get sent to the company's public blockchain. Say it's Walmart. So that then goes to the public one, which we know is verified, and then across to Walmart, where they can then use the information properly and things and do things with it. So for me, the wider supply chain of normal products, volume products, that's still work in progress. There's still a lot to do that. The only things that are really working now are high value or things like drugs, pharmaceuticals.
Yeah, no, interesting. And what are your thoughts on like decentralization and centralization? Like, to what degree is something really need to be decentralized, centralized, and does that play into the these discussions of supply chain?
If you read my book, you'll find my opinions very clear on enterprise blockchain, and decentralization is not an impact. It's not a feature. So I'm very clear that public blockchain can decentralize our lives and, decentralize organizations and all those sorts of things. So there is that part. I don't I don't talk about that. I don't use that in terms of business, okay? Because business is a government, an enterprise, you, me, whatever it is. It's a known entity.
Yeah.
And when you come to decentralization versus centralized, it doesn't matter. I want to share information better with you. I've got 1,000, so stick with supply chain. I've got 1,000 suppliers. I need all the information, where the products are, what stage they are, when they were made, etc., and that they're, what they say they are. So I just need that information, and it is centralized because it is to come to me.
Yeah.
But they put it onto a blockchain where it's verified and immutable, so it can never be deleted. So if I take a photo again, of the milk, and I put it on and it's got a code, that I put that on the 30th of December in this geolocation, and that it is the milk from my farm, and that's it. So is that decentralized or centralized is irrelevant in terms of what we're talking about. And believe me, it's taken me years to get people to understand that I am not talking, I don't, in essence, when I say I don't care, I do care, but in terms of enterprise, I don't care whether it's centralized or decentralized. Are you making the information transparent and trusted? That's the important part. And to be honest, normally that means it's centralized. It's a bit of an oxymoron
Yeah.
when you think of blockchain because you think decentralized, and it is. But actually, the way you use information in a government or an enterprise is centralized because guess what? They're centralized, you know. So
Yeah.
so it is you've got to get your head around that.
Yeah, I mean, and you touch on some important topics there, even from the start of Bitcoin and blockchain, which are two separate things, right? An application, on blockchain, leveraging the technology, and that's Bitcoin's use case, and it works really well for that. But when we start going into, decentralization, centralization, private, public chains on the enterprise front, it's a little bit different story, and you touched on it now, and just for our audience watching, right, that are trying to understand these nuances of the space, and we can even call it distributed ledger, right, DLT,
Yeah,
technology, to that degree. And what you're saying and what I'm hearing is that this DLT, distributed ledger technology, blockchain, whatever we want to call it, is a way that the enterprise ecosystem, vendors, suppliers, stakeholders, parties are able to efficiently operate. Everybody kind of knows what's going on. Everybody understands where things are, and we'll stick to the retail side of the supply chain, the provenance of certain products and the journey of that through from whatever seed to table, right? You kind of understand where things are at, and that's kind of what I'm hearing from you is that depending on your use case and how you're using it for the enterprise world, that's more important. Whether it's not whether it's public or not. It's just how do we operate better? How can we? We have thousands of vendors and stakeholders and parties involved. How can we keep track of that? And what are some of the challenges for? It makes sense from the main player or the few players of that consortium. What about the surrounding the smaller vendor, supplier, these other what are their thoughts on integrating this tech? Does it make sense for them? Are they, just doing it because they have to, because, it's a top-down kind of thing?
No, I think there is part of the top-down. So if Walmart says that you have to track your bananas or your milk, you do, or you don't do business with them. But I think there's a more human side to this. I think you don't know where this water's from. I do. But I don't actually know whether this is from, where it says it is. I can't verify that. I have to trust the brand that it says. And you think coffee, you think tea, orange, etc., and then you get into clothing and things like that. We as customers and humans, we want to know where things are from. We want to know it is what it says, that it hasn't been in any bad areas and things like that. And, child labor with clothing and those sorts of things. You want to verify these things. And so that means that blockchain can enable that to happen. And it probably would be more the public blockchain side of it. So small farmers in, the middle of somewhere, the Amazon rainforest, for example, they can use a phone, again, to take a photo, to upload an app of their coffee, the coffee beans and things like that. If it's going through to Starbucks, say, and then we know. We could even get a cup of coffee you know, when you go to Starbucks, and it can have a picture of me as the farmer, you know, with my coffee going, hi, you know, and it verifies the date, the time, the place. Doesn't that make you as a customer think, I want to shop with that company because I trust them? I can see that it's Antony's coffee from the Amazon rainforest, you know. So this is now going to start to happen. So there was the push from the bigger companies to say, you know, Walmart, you have to start doing this. But actually, there's now the customer human side of, we do want to know this. We do want to know that it is fair trade coffee. You know, I always look, you know, fair trade coffee, that symbol has been around for years. Do you ever know that that fair trade coffee is fair trade? I mean, you know, we've
No.
never asked the question. We just go, I can, you know, I can do that logo myself. You know, it's easy. Now, I'm not saying that there's anything bad about fair
Yeah,
trade
yeah,
coffee, but in this day and age, in this world and global supply chains, anything could come from anywhere. One of the projects we worked at with Oracle, one of the first ones ever, was actually tracking olive oil. So it's very,
yeah,
very tiny, tiny use case.
yeah.
Uh, but it's expensive olive oil that's sold in the US, mainly in New York, because it comes from some amazing olive trees in Italy. But what was happening or could have been happening was maybe the olives were mixed with some other olives, and the olives you got might have been Italian and Spanish and Greek and some other oil, etc. So you want to know if you're spending something like $20 for a small bottle, it's going to be expensive oil. But you want to know then that that is what it says. And so we put the tracking in so you could basically see where it came from, more or less which olive tree. It wasn't down to the actual tree and things, but the area and things like that. So you could know that that's happening. So there is a massive value for humanity and for people to understand what's real and spend the money in the places they want to. That might cost, it's expensive olive oil. It's probably 10 times a normal bottle. But I want to do that because I know it's from Italy. I know it was no child labor, no, you know, chemicals, etc. So we need to give you know, the citizens, people, these choices so that we know what we're doing, what we're eating, what we're buying.
And I think it's important to note here, and I haven't heard this being brought up actually too much or at all as of recent, was just the demand side, right? We're creating this technology, and some are failing, some are too soon, some are too advanced. And you know, in this bubble, it makes sense. But on the consumer side, and that's what I meant by the demand side, right? And you brought that up. It's like the user, like you know, we have a lot of you know, university students right now probably working on projects and stuff. You have to take that into consideration, that just because your technology, you know, may be the best, or the project, or the you know, the use case, doesn't mean that the user, it's valued enough. So you have to pay attention to kind of the demand needs, and like, you know, does them using this technology, switching legacy systems, whatever that may be, is it worth it? Because we just talked about decentralization and centralization. And right now, centralization works for all of us. We're used to it. It's been going down for, you know, quite some time, as far as, you know, traditional systems and how we operate. So yeah, you touch on some important topics there that I just wanted to highlight, that
Yeah.
it's very critical that you understand your target market when you're implementing some tech, because you may
I
have
think,
you may
yeah.
be solving a problem, but the need, you know, for the user to use it, you know, the value might not be there. So make sure that, you know, you put so much effort and time into it that it's worth it
I
for them to make the switch.
That is without question so important that so with DXC, one of the things that we moved was from the innovation team to the commercial team. So as the way we operate KPIs and the, you know, the way we manage the business, and that was because as innovation you can do what you want. You can build a blockchain to go to the moon, to do whatever you want. It doesn't matter about adoption. It doesn't matter about
Yeah,
money, business, right? Reality is even governments need to cover costs and make money and things and make it more efficient. Companies, obviously, most of them are profit making, or if they're non-profit making, they've got a reason where they need to make money to pay the bills. So there is always a business case somewhere. And just because the tech's amazing and look at this cool stuff, I I've spent the last 5, 6 years seeing cool stuff that blockchain can do, and it can do some amazing stuff. But the reality is, what I have to do now, and what we should look at now, is practical. what's practical, what can be, as you say, the demand, what will the users want to use? So a great one that I've seen recently, which is one of the Nem solutions actually, it's called Nem Graph, and that basically is Instagram, but using Nem platform, and it basically it tracks your photos and what you're doing and things. So in essence, you could monetize your photos, your creative work, etc. So when you start to think about that, you think of the world we're in now, post-COVID, where we're a lot more virtual. We're going to be more virtual than we have ever been in history. And that means I can record this, but actually this is my content, say. So how do I monetize it? How do I make sure that, you don't steal it? I know this is for your conference, so but if it was me just doing this myself, how do I make sure that I retain the benefits and I retain, the goodness and the leads and things? And so again, blockchain can embed, different information so that you can track where was my YouTube watched, who watched it, what happened with it, etc. So again, these sort of use cases, still, if you launch that today, it wouldn't make any money. But as we realize, as the whole social media world and Google, Facebook, Amazon are all just using our information and making billions from us, once we start to say, maybe I should get paid for my content because I've just given you lots of amazing information for free. Why shouldn't I? Because that's my I need to pay my bills, I need to eat, etc. So I think this side of it again is where user adoption will take off, but it's like you say, is it ready today? Tech is, but I don't think the adoption and the business model is just yet. But that one could be months away. That's not 20 years away. That's more like 1 or 2 years away, I think, the start of that. And again, all of these things will start this small. Okay. One of the things I always say with enterprise, when you're talking to a big company or a government, I sell the dream, right? If you ever see me talking, I sell the blockchain dream, and everything's going to be blockchain, and we're all going to be doing blockchain, and the whole world's going to be blockchain. And I do all that. And then I go into a boardroom or meeting with the clients, and I go, right, forget about that bit. What can we do to improve this tiny part of your system today with blockchain? Right? Because if I improve that today, then that, then this, yes, in 10 years' time, maybe your entire business is built on blockchain then. But I'm not going to do that overnight. It's tiny, tiny incremental benefits. Like with supply chain, it's high value items first, then maybe less value, and then lesser value. But you're learning, the technology is getting cheaper, more efficient, etc. So it's not about this, we're going to blockchain everything. And a lot of startups and sort of students, especially when they're coming out of university and different courses, they're very much like, oh, we could do this and let's go and talk to GE and Walmart and Google. And it's like, they have invested trillions of dollars in their systems, which are dire. They're old. They can't change them overnight. They're 10, 20 years. So it is this think small. Even though I talk big and I think big, it's always the reality is what small things can I do today, that just changes it, make it so just 3 bits of information we put on blockchain and share it. That's it. That's the first stage. And then all of a sudden it grows.
Yeah, no, totally. And I think we've had some similar discussions on our end too. We have our engineering team. So, we're advising, consulting, and working with our corporate, partners and clients. And like everybody's kind of, for the past, couple years, maybe some have gone into production. Some have stayed in the POC, like pilot purgatory, and kind of fatigued a little bit. And same discussion on our end. It's like, before we get into like this major 6 to 12 month POC, maybe we can build some infrastructure that allows you to scale more pilots at a cheaper cost. That way we have more data, and you're doing like, instead of 1 to 2 for a few mil, we're doing like, 10 to 20 for, a quarter of that. So you have some important points there, which now, it's a great transition into Nem, right? We just talked about your thoughts, your experiences, and insights into your journey to like how you apply it and how you see it playing out in some of the important components of blockchain. Let's get into Nem. And so I've heard in the past that like Nem is the Ethereum of the East, right? Just kind of this platform. And Apple made some APIs and SDKs for like beginners and developers to onboard rather quickly and build applications and develop and do what they do best. I've heard them as kind of the Apple of the blockchain world in the sense of providing these resources, these tools to help build products and help onboard developers. Is that accurate to say? I know you've been here like a few months or a couple weeks. Touch on what you know or how you see the Nem software playing out.
Yeah. I think the Nem platform, the original Nem platform, which is now NIS1, NAS1, so that's been around since 2015. Complete uptime, completely, no problems, coin hacks on wallets separate. But in essence, it's been the same as far as I see, as Ethereum. It's just not been as highly adopted as Ethereum globally. But obviously, as you say, in Japan, in China, in Malaysia, Philippines, etc., there's loads of different things, like tons of things happening, which are built on them. So the principle of it is that smaller businesses, entrepreneurs, SMEs can go and play, and build things on it. That's the point of it. And so, your sort of Apple App Store is quite a good analogy for that. And that's been around and that will continue. That's a massive part of our ecosystem and our future that, entrepreneurs, students, smaller businesses come and play with the software, play with the platform, build these things, because some of these things are going to be big. Some of these apps and developments are going to be, world leaders. And so it's really important that people continue to use that. And it's the philosophy that goes behind Symbol and where Symbol is. Do you want me to talk about Symbol?
Yeah. And you know what? Before you get into Symbol, definitely we'll touch on that shortly. But my next question was going to be, we just talked about a lot of enterprise. So obviously Nem and Symbol is focused on enterprise grade functionality and support. Why is that? Well, why is enterprise? Is it because of all the kind of the things we just talked about? Really, was efficiency, transparency, and there's a need from the corporate side and enterprise side, which is why Nem is focused on that so heavily.
Yeah, I think so. When you look at the blockchain journey for enterprise, it's Hyperledger, it's Corda, it's the private side of it. And so what that has happened is over the last 4 or 5 years is it's starting to reach a peak. You can't do that much more. You can't really scale how you need. And so that's where the difference is, where Symbol has been built sort of over the last couple of years to fix these problems. And the other side of it, to integrate, any of the other sort of private enterprise platforms is really hard to integrate and really expensive. Whereas what we built with Symbol is an API interface. So it's the same as their internal systems, be it, a finance system, a customer system, a supply chain system. So what that means is that we can integrate into the heart of their businesses very quickly. So we can test things a lot quicker, we can grow a lot quicker. And I think that's really fundamental between this public-private sort of side of it, which is meshed as one really. Apart from the techies, nobody really knows which one's which. We don't need to. As long as it all works together and does what we need with the data and transactions, and for an enterprise, without question, the security is there, then that's what we need. And the ease of use, it's the ease of, you shouldn't be going to an enterprise saying, right, everyone in your IT department needs to learn a brand new programming language. They go, but hang on, they all do Java and C++. They've been doing it for 100 years. Why do they have to learn this new language? They're not going to do it.
Yeah.
They still run all the other systems. There's still a whole, IT infrastructure around them. So again, you need to be in a language that people use. So the IT, the tech teams that are there within the companies who are trusted, they know how it all integrates. They know how the security works. They need to be able to go, right, I get your code and I can do this, and we can plug in the API and we can work with you. We can run with that system, that the sort of Symbol protocol. So that's where this is at the next stage. It's sort of next generation hybrid blockchain, which is again what Ethereum are trying to do with Ethereum 2.0, but there's a long way to go. But again, it's the same philosophy. We're just there before them. So it's a bit, with NIS1 or Nem, we were behind. With Symbol, we're going to be ahead. So it's actually quite a nice transition. And, it's the same philosophy. It's the same type of thing that we're trying to do. And enterprise is important because it's our lives. It's our world.
Yeah.
Governments, big companies, doesn't matter whether we love them or hate them. That's irrelevant. We all have to use Apple and Microsoft and governments. So why not make them more efficient so that they're easier to work, especially governments, so they're easier to work with and things.
Yeah, and just real quick, do you think, and I won't spend too much time, I just thought of it right now, like the adoption of this blockchain distributed DLT in enterprise, does that correlate with like cryptocurrency use on the more of the token, currency side of things?
So the whole sort of tokenization and sort of cryptocurrency is bad, do not talk about it, is gone. Now tokenization of assets, digital assets, is amazing.
Yeah.
Like, it is the next big thing for enterprise. And I said this pre-COVID, then COVID's taken a few different turns now for enterprise blockchain, but digital assets are by far the main thing. And if you take, for me, the king of digital assets is a central bank digital currency. So the CBDCs, which everybody's starting to hear about and talk about, that's the digital dollar, the digital pound, etc., etc. What's happening there is all the banks globally are now looking at it. But obviously some banks are smaller, some are bigger, some are regulated harder and softer, etc. And so we're in this whole world with CBDC where there's so much research. Like, I've probably read around about probably 20 reports in the last month or so.
Me too,
And
actually. It's interesting. They started popping out.
there's hundreds of them, like literally hundreds of them now. And so the good thing with Symbol and what we've done so far, so we've done the LB coin, which is the Bank of Lithuania. And so it's the first physical sort of token. Now, you can't have a physical token, so I always like to say that. But it's the first real use of a digital currency whereby you can buy some tokens and then you can exchange those with other people using the blockchain, the Nem blockchain. And then you can then exchange those for a physical silver coin. So which has a real value, so you could go and buy things for it, etc., etc. So it's the first sort of real test. It's not a true central bank currency because it's, there's many other things with it, but it's a great step forward. And what's that allowed the bank in Lithuania to do is be more advanced with the EU sandbox. So the sandbox is like the testing of digital currencies with all the regulation and everything that goes around it. The regulation is the bit that's going to kill everything at the moment. It already does, but that's the bit that needs to be sorted out. So a central bank currency is complex, but it's not as complex as the regulation around it. Because all of a sudden, imagine if your dollars became digital dollar tokens that are tracked better. Now it's tracked better than cash. It's tracked everywhere though.
Are we giving them too much control? Are we giving them too much control if it goes down that route? I had a discussion with an advisor on the central bank side a couple of days ago,
Yeah.
and it's cash is king, right? In the sense of and crypto is not the best way to funnel money. So it plays in the favor of governments and sovereign nations and states.
Yeah.
It was like
the privacy of the central bank currency is one of the issues that we see, because what information do I have to give, be it to have a wallet, say, to keep my coins in, or to actually transact? So again, there's difference between those, but in essence, I'm going to have to tell you everything that I do, and you're going to track me for everywhere. Now, COVID, they want to track us to do everything anyway. So are we giving up too much or not? You can actually make coins, so that they can't be tracked and things, but not a government issued one, because they wouldn't do that. They may say they're not, but you can track it. You can track Bitcoin anyway. We all know, well, not everyone knows, but you can track Bitcoin if you need to.
Of course.
The FBI knows all about it. They've got plenty of them. So I think the privacy element is the interesting thing, because the more that we digitize assets, so this could be real estate, this could be wines and things like that. So we're working on whiskey and things like that, digitizing on NEM platform again. But who has what information? So we can make it cryptographic, so you can't understand it and external people can't. But internal, inside the network, everybody knows, or people that know can know everything. So that's the dilemma. But my view is, well, are you doing dodgy things with your money? We shouldn't be doing it, should you? I live in the UK, and I remember we've had a discussion for probably about 50 years before I was alive about should we have an identity card. We don't have one in the UK. We never have. And whenever anybody says it, they go, I don't want one. I don't want them tracking me. And I go, why? What are you doing wrong? And more importantly, this phone, this is
Yeah,
tracking everything that you do.
same thing. I know.
So
Alexa too.
exactly. So with privacy,
Turn
I'm a
her
bit.
off. I turned off Alexa just in case.
It's one of those things where I sit there and go, you can talk about privacy of digital coins, but let's worry about this. Let's worry about the network where we're now doing this, the Wi-Fi, because who's listening to this? What is Zoom doing with this, etc. You know what I mean? So it's a bigger picture. I think as long as we know what people are using it for and why, I think we're in a better situation than today, because a lot of the time we don't understand what people do with our data.
And so one thing that I'm taking away from this initial topic right now is like product market fit. From the previous V1 of Nem to Symbol, it seems like you listen to some feedback, which is good for our listeners, right? We just talked about it a little bit ago. Like, you can't just plug in this technology and like assume. And you said it just a few moments ago about you selling the blockchain dream, which everybody hears and listens and it makes sense. But you got to like scale that back once you get in the doors of like how to implement. We start small. What are some pain points that we can leverage this tech and then build it out, right? And product market fit. So it seems like you evolved from the first version to V2 now, which is Symbol. Listening to your clients and your corporate clients on how to integrate this stuff, which is important because I think we're talking about Web 2.0 too and Web 3.0 and like implementing Web 3.0 technology with like the same Web 2.0 mindset, business models, and there's going to be a lot of friction there. So that's kind of cool that you're going back and you're making these changes and you made the change and Symbol launched, right? Like a few months ago, or
it's in test now. It launches officially in December, but we are using it now, and clients can talk to us about it now. So we're in final testing phase because there's just a few bits to finish off, but in all intents and purposes, it's out there for us to use, but not the full version.
yeah.
Will be I think it's December, mid-December.
And what's some feedback? What's some feedback? Because you just brought up working with the Bank of Lithuania, and you're talking. I'm assuming you're talking to other government, agencies. Yeah. How's that feedback? We have a few minutes here. Do you have a hard cutoff or?
No, that's cool.
Yeah. We might probably go over, but what's some feedback on that front regarding Symbol? Right. I want to make sure that everybody understands Symbol, and we're talking about enterprises at the same time. It's a hybrid approach. So. For startups and projects, they can leverage it as well, right?
Exactly. And so I'll answer the question first and then come back to startups because it's important learning there. But yeah, so learning about what, as you've said, we've learned from things like, APIs, easy programming, multi-signature. I didn't mention that. But again, in a corporate, you have 5,000 different layers of people who have to sign off things. So you need multi-signature and things like that. So the whole ethos was, we can't grow enterprise. We can't grow blockchain solutions within enterprise with the solutions we have today. We need to go to this next generation. Think back to the internet. Think of what Amazon looked like when it launched. Dire, like really dire. I mean, Google even when it was launched. Yeah. I mean, it's embarrassing. I'm sure not for them if they kept the shares, but you know what I mean. It's the next generation. It's just natural in any tech that we're moving to that. So. Going into enterprise, it is all that they are, impressed with the sort of learning and what's happened and the fact that it does what it says. It is easy to use. We can scale it. All these things that they need, that they struggle with on other solutions. That's where we're getting the feedback and the interest. And the funniest thing is that it's still, Nem is still the unknown, really. It's still, not many people know Nem. But yeah, it's been around for so long, so it's, for Symbol to come out and, we're going to do a lot of marketing around it. We've already started. There's a lot more growth coming out. But it's good because it's the right time. And I think the bit that you mentioned earlier about if we'd have launched this a year ago, probably wouldn't have been as useful because the enterprise hadn't got to the level where, public, private, we do need to think. They were still private. So now is the right time. And again, it's like you said, the timing wise. The other bit that you mentioned just before, and I think it's critically important, is these entrepreneurs, students, startups, these, one-off people maybe, or two or three, they have ideas, build it on Nem or Symbol, once it goes live in full live, but build it on that, because that is then connected with the Bank of Lithuania. These big corporates are using the same. Yes, they may be using more of the enterprise side of it than the private side of it than the public, but they're using it. So if you build an app that is amazing for these, tiny, that could go to one of the biggest companies in the world because they're using the enterprise side of it, and they can all of a sudden use it without question. We don't have to go through an entire process to build it for them. If it's on Symbol public, it can be used on Symbol private with a few changes, obviously, for their security. But
it's like a plug and play.
exactly. So if you're building on our sort of Symbol public platform, your apps, it's great. You can play with them. You can share it with your friends. You can put it in university. You can build a little business on it. But you can also have the opportunity to build a big, because enterprise are not innovative as in nature, because they're too big.
Yep.
So they need that innovation. And one of the things I love about Symbol is that we've got both. We've got a massive Nem community, a massive public community, and then we're going to have the massive sort of enterprise working with them together. That means that you as one person are as powerful as Microsoft, Amazon, etc., because you're playing on the same level. Yeah, they just do 1 million more transactions than you, but it's still the same solution. And that's what I think is amazingly powerful. And one of the real reasons why I joined is because I can see mixing both sides now. And if you read the book, which was written before I joined Symbol, I always said that it levels the playing field. So I used to advise the UK government on blockchain previous to COVID. And one of the things I always said to the government was, this levels the playing field because it's shared, because it's trusted and transparent. A small business can compete with a big business. Yes, the volumes are different, but actually on the solutions and the tech, that's massively powerful in this new world, especially as we're more virtual, as I said before. So I'm really excited about the new start and sort of what we can do with this, and what the community and people who are watching this can do. Get on there, play with it, start building, use your crazy ideas, which you may think are crazy. Get it on there, because some of these crazy ideas are where Amazon, Google, and things come from. That's the reality of the world.
And what kind of programs or initiatives do you think you're going to have, or that you do have? Because I appreciate you kind of, I think NEM's and Symbol's a great platform to work on. As you just mentioned, first of all, I like the fact that you're evolving and changing product market fit, listening, and applying the tech to the real use cases, the groundwork, that we hear, and the pain points that we hear. Are there any programs or initiatives that that you guys are running internally? Like, I think there was Nem Ventures at one time. Are they still in operation?
Yes, we've got a couple of things. So we still have Nem Ventures. So Nem Ventures is like a startup incubator, and we're launching an incubator program as well with that. So if you had a business idea, a business plan, and you need funding and you're going to build it on Symbol, then Nem Ventures is the place to go for a discussion and support and all the network. And we'll grow that as we grow out now the enterprise system solution. The other part we're going to do, and it's good work in progress, so I can't tell you dates because I don't know them yet, but it's not far off, is certification and accreditation. So the first part is we're going to do a SI partner program. So for the people, the implementers who help us implement these systems and that side of it, we're going to have a partner program, which will be launched first. Secondly, we're going to have a developer program, so you can become a certified Symbol developer. Again, most of that will be online. Well, it will be online, and most of it will be, at your own time, so you can learn that and get a developer certificate. And then finally, we're going to continue our education program. So we do a NEM academic university education program. We're going to transfer that a bit more to Symbol, change a few little bits of it, and then roll that out more to more universities globally. So there's sort of three areas really of us educating and supporting the communities so that you guys can start to use this tech and can start to sort of benefit from it.
Yeah, no, thank you. And I think we share similar insights on our end too in investing. And we've had discussions with your team before COVID kind of hit, which took a back seat. And I know you guys gone through some restructuring. So hopefully we'll circle back on that where, our thoughts on the incubation and like investing, working with them as well is to increase projects and DApps, right? And the flip side of that is you talk to governments, corporations, we talk to, similar points of contact. It's kind of a reverse pitch where, we have these enterprises looking at innovating or trying to innovate with their small teams, as you mentioned, looking for other startups and projects. And I think a lot, for all of these founders, there's these opportunities where if you partner up with a Symbol and a Nem, you join their programs, you have an idea, you can leverage their ecosystem. So half the battle, is that right there. It's finding clients and acquiring users. If they join with you, it seems like it's it streamlines that process to get these small teams of the Symbol ecosystem to your corporate partners, and not even that can potentially be its own business, and you support them.
Yep, no, definitely. And that, that's really one of the strengths of this, bringing it together as one. It's not a them and us, it's not public, private and all that. It's all one, it's all under Symbol. And, you get the opportunities to grow around with everyone else. And I'm really looking forward to seeing all the crazy, wonderful ideas that are going to come from the community, which some of them are going to be like, whoa, we need to talk to this government or this corporate because they need this. So as you say, for growing businesses, it's going to really help some of the entrepreneurs out there.
Awesome. So I know we've kind of gone over time here. Kind of want to wrap this up a little bit, Antony. Anything that you want to share that we haven't touched on? I know we touched on a variety of things of your journey. We touched on Nem and kind of the ecosystem and the resources you provide, the hybrid approach. You're talking to governments and enterprises of the world, providing them solutions, listening to them. You've opened the doors for the developer community and startup community by leveraging your university your education program. Nem and Symbol is part of our education campaign as well, bridging that academia and industry partners together because we're firm believers. We both have teams that have spent, I think we've spent over 120,000 development hours just in the last 2.5 years, like our team. So we're big believers in it. Anything that you want to share before we kind of conclude here?
No, I think it's good. I think, people, for me, it's get involved and start to join this. The documentation is out there for Symbol on GitHub. The training and stuff is still work in progress, but September, October, we're going to get stuff out there. We're working hard on this. I'm only 2 weeks into it, and the CTO is joining soon. And so once we're hitting mid-September, I expect to see a lot more coming out there and a lot more information. So really start to follow us, keep an eye on what we're doing. And then as soon as we hit the go live button, get on there and start playing with it, and build things. Because the more you build, the more we can go and talk to people and the more we can bring people together.
Exactly. So with that being said, we'll go ahead and conclude here. Antony, again, thank you for your time. We appreciate Nem as one of our partners joining in our conference this time around and being one of our conference participants back in May. For all of you watching, we plan to do this every month. A lot of shelter-in-place orders, the conference circuit's been canceled and postponed and delayed. Our goal here is to bring industry leaders and global thought leaders, industry partners such as Antony and his team, to video content to you so you can understand whether you're beginner, novice, expert, doesn't really matter. We touched on a whole load of topics and themes here that I feel like you can take away. So with that, we'll go ahead and end this discussion. Antony, thank you for joining in again and taking time out of your day.
Thank you. It was a pleasure.
And for all of you watching, please visit ri2020.io for all the full episodes. You can also visit Reimagine 2020, the YouTube channel, for all of these interviews at your own pace. All right, Antony, thank you and have a good one. We'll talk soon.
Yes. Take care. Thanks all.